Welcome back to the Big Ranch Show. Thank you for joining me. Now, today we're going to talk about George Santos. George Santos, of course, Republican representative from New York, was expelled from Congress today. We're going to talk about the reasons he should have been and probably the real reason why the GOP was so quick to get rid of him. Now, George Santos, what can there be said? What is there to be said? George Santos was a liar, a corrupt politician. But aren't they all? But George Santos did things that you're not supposed to do with your campaign money, for example. You're not supposed to buy designer clothes and things for yourself and enriching yourself. That's not what you're supposed to do with your campaign funds. You're supposed to run your campaign with those campaign funds. But among some of his most egregious things he did was charging people's credit cards when he didn't have authorization to do so. Like people would make one-time donations to his campaign, and then he would subsequently use that credit card information. Apparently, it happened with one representative from Ohio and his mother that George Santos used his card without authorization to make charges to donations to himself that well exceeded the limits for the election law. And in a count of 311 to 114 with two abstentions, I believe they said, um, he was expelled. There's a whole laundry list of things he's done or has been accused of. The House Ethics Committee ruled earlier this month or last month that he had done things, that were illegal, that broke the ethics rules of the House by enriching himself, using his campaigns the way he did, and lying to his constituents about who he was. Now, not only did he initially not really disclose, which I don't think he should have had to, that he was gay. That's a problem for Republicans right away. But the fact is, he is under indictment for fraud here in the U.S. He's also been charged with fraud back in Brazil, where he had spent time as a drag queen. So, he lied to his constituents about his business background, his job background, period. Made like he was so great when he was lying about every bit of it. There's not one thing that I have come across that he was telling the truth about in his campaigns. And if you're going to sit there and lie about your business past, the jobs you've held in the past, your financial situation, then not only are you going to lie about anything, you're susceptible to being bribed by either local people, local American citizens, but even more so by foreign governments and foreign spies. So all in all, George Santos needed to go. There's no question about it. But let's talk about why the GOP actually did it. Now remember, there's a lot of things that you can get away with in Congress. Take Madison Cawthorn. Here's a terrible, terrible congressman. Pushed some terrible ideas, terrible ideology. And then he started talking about some of the things that some Republicans were doing. The drug use, the insider trading, the different fraud and stuff that they had committed. But the Republican Party was okay with his corruption, his lies. I always found it kind of, a pot kettle thing with Madison Cawthorn, where he'd call out Republicans for lying and corruption. Meanwhile, he was lying and corrupt about a lot of things himself. Maybe not to the same tune as George Santos. Much of the reason why he was never expelled. But he did fall out of favor when a video arose of him in the act with a man. All of a sudden, the GOP didn't want to support him. And his local constituents and his district didn't want to support him anymore. But he didn't lose support from the GOP until after that video came out. Same thing with George Santos. With George Santos, they were initially okay with his lies and okay with his corruption. But then everybody realized found out that he was gay. And all of a sudden, since the spring, they've been trying to expel him. Did they try to expel him for lying to his constituents to get the job? No. Did they try to expel him when it was obvious that he had been indicted for fraud, for election fraud? No, they didn't. They waited until well after he took office to even care. Now, like I said earlier, he had to go. There's a lot of people that need to go, both parties included. You don't need to be lying to your constituents. You should not be lying about your background. You should not be lying about your financials. But that's what George Santos did. I just think it's kind of interesting that they didn't really start pushing until those videos of him, or videos of those pictures of him in drag surfaced from Brazil. And then all of a sudden the Republicans are like, oh no, he's got to go, he's got to go. Oh yes, because a gay man in drag, he's the problem, right? Not that he was corrupt, not that he was indicted on, federal election fraud charges, and that all this stuff. No, no. They got upset when they found out that he dressed in drag because it hurts their narrative that drag people or that people in drag are an inherent threat. And because that's just how the Republican Party is these days. If you're not cis and straight, they don't want you in their ranks. They will shun you. They will censor you. They will do all sorts of things to try to get you out of their party. Even punish you for things that other people in your caucus are doing. Anyhow, I hope y'all are doing good out there. I still am positive for COVID. Everybody I know that had it before is pretty much done. They're negative. I'm the only one sitting here with still a positive test as of Wednesday night. I'm going to test again today. Hopefully, I'll do better. Anyhow, I hope y'all have a good weekend, and I'll see you down the road.